Blessed be all of my soul family and allies out there. In this video, we're going to be talking all about ethics. We're going to be talking about morals, right and wrong, black and white magic, as well as what we need to understand about okays and not okays as we are navigating the path. And it can be a very complicated thing to look at every once in a while, whether you are just starting on your path and you're looking out there and you're seeing all of these different traditions and philosophies and cultures all having their own says and all having their own takes, as well as complicated for those of you who may be on the path. You may already have a path, you may be very practiced, but you are realizing that maybe your own personal codes, your own personal ethics differ a bit from what may be a part of a certain path or a tradition that you have, or something that you were brought up with, regardless of what you were brought up with, whether it was in your family, or it was in your culture, or it was in the community that you were brought up in. It can be a very confusing place to go. When we talk about the spiritual path and we talk about things like divination, manifestation, energy work, directing your will, magic, casting spells, it can get even more complicated because now you are kind of taking on a lot more activity than just what you might consider to be morally or ethically right or wrong in the mundane world, right? In the mundane world, we of course need to pay attention to things like traffic safety and politeness and manners and situational awareness and kindness and, empathetic and social and emotional fluency and of course self-control and impulse control and all of these things that we do need to be able to mind and discipline in order to maintain harmony, balance, function, and peace. Well, when we go into the realm of spirit, now all of a sudden we are getting to see where the energetic side of all of these things, as well as how energy works, plays into our experience. And so a lot of philosophies and ethics and morals and codes that we have, both in the mundane world and the spiritual world, you kind of learn that these are all assumptions, or these are all suppositions that people make in order to, in their hopes and in their interpretation of it, create a sense of peace, philosophy, harmony, and balance. I think that there is a core set of, codes of decency we can look at when it comes to the discussion of any kind of spiritual path and practice. A code of decency and a code of heart that is across the board. And following that code is simply all about don't be an asshole. Don't do things just to mess with people. Don't project your bullshit, and do not dump your psycho on the world, right? Don't unleash your shit on the universe and create chaos and disharmony and imbalance. Don't do things that are going to mess up, the universe that you want to be at home in, if you want to be at home in it. But of course, even that in and of itself can sometimes be a difficult thing to do, or circumstances may come up where you have to take exceptions or make exceptions. You can often see moments where a lot of what is harm or what is good or what is bad is still subjective from a person-to-person basis. When we are looking at, how do you interpret "and it harm none" versus you, if you follow that rule, if you believe in that. A lot of people don't. I do not follow the rule "and it harm none," and I'll explain why here shortly. I do not believe in the rule of three either. Do I mock or say that people who say "and it harm none" are, stupid or silly or naive? No, but I do think that what I look at in that situation is somebody who has made it a part of their moral code and their ethical code, their personal code, to do as little harm as possible. Sometimes we might think that we are doing something good, when in actuality we could be doing something that could do a great deal of harm. And we do not want to, be the kind of person who just says, well, my intentions were good, therefore I'm not responsible, and I don't share responsibility for the consequences of the situation. And so let's say Ashley decides she's going to do a spell for her boyfriend to beat the competition and to get a job that he does not have the training for. And her spell is successful. Ashley is a very powerful witch, and she's extremely capable of making such a thing happen. And she does. And her boyfriend gets a job handling equipment and heavy machinery that he has no training with, but he is going to fake it till he makes it, and causes an accident. Now, obviously, if we were looking at this in a strictly mundane sense, we can say, all right, well, hold on a minute. Where was the hiring manager? Where was the background check? But we're talking about a spiritual experience, right? We're talking about magic, something that does transform the way things are ordered in our reality, the way things come about, the way things come together, right? This is taking the notion of, say, manifestation, but working with it at a much more advanced level. When we're dealing with magic and we're dealing with spells, we are moving powerful forces. And yes, I have seen and done things with my magic that have allowed me to do things and have things that normally I would have to go to very different lengths to get if I were just to live in the mundane. So Ashley being able to get her boyfriend a job he probably should not have is not out of the realm of possibilities, and I've seen people do it before. But that spell causes an accident, and her boyfriend hurts himself and his co-worker. Should Ashley be holding herself at least somewhat responsible for that situation? Now, Ashley, let's say she knew full well what this job entails and what this job, the risks would be, and what skill level would be required to do this job safely and to do this job well. She just did a simple spell to make sure that her boyfriend got a job, and a well-paying job at that, something that he could be proud of and something that would lift him up. It's well-intentioned enough, but it caused an accident. So she does need to take some responsibility for it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the karma police are going to come to her house and haul her away, but it does mean she has to accept responsibility. And yes, I would say if I were, say, Ashley's mentor or teacher, I'd be like, girl, you better be doing some stuff to rebalance that situation. Simply healing and cleaning up the mess probably won't do. But so it is. What is right and what is wrong is not so black and white. So what about doing harm? People talk about doing harm. We might not all agree on what harm actually is, or what is doing harm versus what is not doing harm. An example of this would be, those sort of bimbo-ish wannabe white witch, always talking about white magic versus black magic types of folks you see out there are very much, I would never cast a curse, I would never cast a hex, I would never, ever. But at the same time, every other video or every other post they have is about casting love spells on people and doing things that very clearly are messing with other people, and not believing that is doing harm. Now, perhaps in those individuals, philosophy, or from their perspective, harm only means injury. Harm only means, a direct hurt, but everything else is okay. I might argue that a love spell that is intended to manipulate somebody into thinking it's important to be with you is very harmful. You are taking this person off of their path. You are invading their intuitive and psychic space. You are drowning out their guides. You are perhaps even messing up a lot of their own timelines, a lot of their own paths. You are making it about your journey. Now, you might not necessarily be causing any kind of visible injury, but at the same time, it can be argued that you're doing a great deal of harm, especially when you think about, well, what kinds of collateral effects your work is doing. That being said, when it comes to doing things like manipulation or mind control, I can even headcanon a situation where, even though it is very much against one of my core ethics and my core philosophies, because I'm not afraid to do harm. I'm not afraid to mess somebody up, and I will mess somebody up if I feel it's absolutely warranted. But for me, it's like going into a place where, one is imposing their will, trying to take away somebody's ability to think for themselves, or to infest them with thoughts of anything, whether it be love or a directive or control or mental domination. I won't go there if I can help it. But I myself can at least headcanon a bit of a philosophy problem around that, because I do need to test myself every once in a while and understand that no, I can't be overly rigid, because every situation can have an exception. I might be tempted, and I might let myself do something like that, a mental control or a mind control, if I thought that maybe I needed to. Say, for instance, a loved one of mine was not of sound mind. They were already in a place where they were in a circumstance with their health and their mental health where they were not taking care of themselves, and they were not seeking help, they were not accepting help, and they were not consciously able to function. And they were declining, and they were not seeking any kind of medical care or attention for a health emergency. And I was not capable of being physically present to say, even if it was against their will, get them help or get them to help. Say they were in another state or another country. I would cast a spell to manipulate that person to go and get themselves the help that they needed, if I thought that, yes, it would help them with the circumstance with their health or their mental health. I absolutely would. Because I know that even though it's against my personal moral and ethical code, my moral and ethical code is not the supreme code of the universe. I am not a cosmological narcissist, and I am not a wounded narcissist. So even though I might think, really, I do not think it's a good idea to manipulate people, I don't think it's a good idea to hypnotize people, I don't think it's a good idea to mentally dominate people, and all of that, I could make an exception for a situation where I thought it might save somebody's life, to manipulate them with mental messages and mental directions, and use control magics to essentially puppeteer them to a space and a circumstance where they would get medical help and treatment that they needed. But you have to be mature about it, and you have to take responsibility for the magic that you do as well. Just like you have to take responsibility for the actions that you take in life. Now, you may not agree with me on certain things. You may not agree. You might actually think, oh my God, well, Nico's not afraid to do harm, but he's also willing to make exceptions to his moral and ethical code. Yes, because I am a grown-up. And so I am well aware that nothing is black and white, that we live in a world of color, and that we live in a universe with a color spectrum that goes beyond what our human eyes can see. And that means magic, just like ethics, needs to be thought through. Let's talk about doing harm on purpose, or casting a spell knowing that it could do harm. How do you decide whether or not something like that is okay? An example of this is a very popular spell, and people love to do this spell, and people love to talk about this spell, and that is a return to sender, a reversal. A reversal can do a great deal of harm depending on what's getting sent your way. You know, why wouldn't you just cleanse and call it a day? Why wouldn't you just put up a barrier or neutralize the negativity coming at you versus sending it back? Because the point of a reversal and a return to sender is to incapacitate your attacker. That is the core behind it. And some people will use it, yes, as a way to get a bit of retributive justice for something that may be getting done to them, a psychic attack, an energetic attack, or some kind of spiritual harm. But at the end of the day, part of the return to sender's function is to incapacitate who is attacking you. And so by casting a return to sender, you know you are potentially doing harm. I don't care in that kind of situation. If somebody is trying to psychically attack me, spiritually attack me, magically attack me, hex me, curse me, or mine, or intrude on my space, or infest my space or something like that, and they know they are, in a bad spot, or they are just sending energy that should not be sent to me, and it is a breach, I don't care at that point in time, because you know what? My friends, my loved ones, my family that I do love, all know how to treat me. And people who don't know how to treat me sometimes need to remember that roses have thorns. And that is something to think about as well. If there is nothing but love and light in the universe, why do roses have thorns? Why would they need to have thorns? Why do bees have stingers? Why do frogs have poison? Because sometimes you need to do a little harm. Now, for me personally, when it comes to doing things like that, or any kind of spiritual combat or spiritual warfare, I do, however, have a rule of keeping a balance. I never send or send back more than I was given. And the reason I don't do that is because one of the most important things we need to remember about things like consequences and lashback and karma and things like that is that it all comes back to balance and maintaining a balance. And as long as you stay, for the most part, within what we could call the bounds of equivalent exchange, quoting Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood here, and you don't stray from balance, then you will not need to be worried so much about extreme consequences or lashback or rebounds that are effectively just the universe resetting itself once magical work has been done. In fact, most of the time when people are dealing with karmic lashback or, those kinds of things or rebound effects and whatnot, and spiritual and karmic consequences, it's because they have gone out of the bounds of balance and equivalent exchange. And so I'm not afraid to fight somebody. I'm not afraid to fight somebody back. I don't go out looking for trouble. I don't go out looking to start fights. I don't go out looking to project harm and drama and craziness onto people. And that's, again, a discussion for another day. That's not an invitation for you to go in headcanon ways for you to be okay with becoming a troublemaker or being a drama starter or just hexing and cursing left and right because you've got issues. In fact, there is nothing more pathetic than a spiritual practitioner that decides to wave the I have trauma flag after they've started a wildfire. Okay? The universe, spirit, the divine never turns around and says, Oh, well, you have trauma. Okay, well, then just do whatever the hell you want all the time. There will never be any balancing act or correction to anybody's timelines or anybody's stories or any kind of environmental consequences for the collateral of your effect. We all have to take responsibility for what we do and what we bring and what we project and what we emanate into the world. Even people who don't know anything about magic. Whether you believe in, it is okay to mentally do this and do that or whatever, or you don't believe it, or, you maybe you are aware that sometimes, you might welcome an exception, or you can headcanon a situation where you might make an exception. These are all personal spiritual choices for your own personal spiritual path. It's okay to have personal ethics and personal codes and personal morals. Some do not care about things like "and it harm none" or rule of three, and some do. Some demand conformity. Some do not demand conformity. Some demand this, some do not demand that. It's your journey. It's your story. It's your path and it's your practice. Now, yes, when we come into the discussion of working with deities and working with different paths and working with different disciplines and cultures, you may need to understand that you are taking on certain rules, certain etiquettes, certain understandings, some that you may take on just because they organically resonate with you in the bigger picture, in the grander scheme of you and your soul and oversoul. But sometimes you are taking things on as a discipline because it is helping you to grow and mature. And sometimes you are not. And sometimes maturing means not holding on to a code or an ethic or a fundamentalist teaching. And the part of your evolution is learning to get out of some kind of programming. It's a very, very multidimensional process that we always go through. And so I feel like I'm not going to know how to get out of this video if I don't wrap it up now. And you know me, I'm not very good at conclusions. So I think I'm going to leave it at that, just leave it as some food for thought and contemplation for now. But I would, of course, like to open the floor to questions, to thoughts, to comments, anything that, you would like to maybe explore or dive into more. If there is maybe a topic that I brought up or something I brought up in this video that you would like me to maybe extrapolate, more on, please let me know and what you think. And, because I welcome, of course, a healthy, strong, intelligent philosophical discussion because, well, that's required when you are exploring the path and advancing yourself, whatever that spiritual path might be.